Hello there, welcome back to another set of shows. You'll probably notice I have a new camera set up. I've even got a better webcam now. What I'm trying to do is set everything up so that I can pop on and do videos in a more casual manner than what I had before, which was basically a video camera and lighting and all the rest of it. I'm still going to do it that way sometimes. Just depends on what I feel like doing for a certain video. But that's where I can drop in, do more casual, so it makes it easier for me. So that's the big difference, and you get a background of Blu-rays and stuff rather than just this side background or that side background, which was just blank unless I put a green screen up. So today I'm going to start with a Tsukamoto double bill. It's another one. I do these because no one watches them. I start with Vital before I go on to Tetsuo The Bullet Man. These are both 2000s Tsukamoto films, and it's one of those weird ones where there's one of them is always a much better than another one, because Vital is pretty much post-century in this century. This is the fourth Tsukamoto film I'd call a masterpiece, so that's something. He's really knocking them out. He doesn't do films all the time, but he seems to put the work in and plan them out. Now, he's done a couple of films in the 2000s that are highly rated, like Sneaker June, which I've seen, but not for ages, basically. And I think I'm not sure Gemini was 99 or 2000, but he's also done Nightmare Detective, which I still need to watch. But, Nightmare Detective 2. But Vital was his, and he did Maze, which I've already covered. Vital was the kind of is look at grief. And of course, Tsukamoto literalizes it and physicalizes it and has a very body conscious view of grief and view of the body and a view of guilt and sin and who you are and what you are, and so he's very much a physicalize your trauma kind of director. So obviously it's going to be a different kind of thing. Doesn't mean he's going to do a Cronenberg thing either. I mean, he does something that, because he's in the body horror area, kind of, because whenever you see body horror now, it's almost become like a cliche, which means you can almost simplify a Tsukamoto film or simplify a Cronenberg film, and it's too easy, basically. So that's why I'm kind of a bit, I'm a bit wary of doing it. So I try not to do that, but it's just a kind of a case of showing you that's where the first conscious is about the body and how the body reacts to certain things, but it doesn't mean they're doing the same thing. And Tsukamoto is a much more emotional filmmaker than David Cronenberg, really. Cronenberg's more intellectual. What does this mean? What does that mean? Where Tsukamoto is almost a physicalization of the emotion within him. Doesn't mean he's not intellectual. He does have a lot of good ideas in his films too, but he is much more a sensualist director. He's much more about a sense of making the camera express the feelings that are also being expressed through the body and through the society around him. He's not like Cronenberg, who is a bit more distant in a way. He's a bit funnier. Well, Sakamoto's funny too, but he's at more of a distance from the situation. Really well, Tsukamoto's a bit closer to the situation, and he's more an emotional director. So too, Vital. Vital is just wonderful. Vital is a very emotional film, and it's one of those ones that's hard to talk about. I was actually intimidated for a week to talk about this one. I mean, one of the reasons why I haven't done a video is tech reasons and other stuff going in their own life that sometimes slows you down, but also I was kind of intimidated by this film to talk about it, because it is a tricky one to talk about, because you don't want to give everything away on it, but it's like, maybe I just say, just go see it, like, leave this video and go see Vital is the best thing I can say to you right now. And Tetsuo the Bullet Man is worth a look too. It's not as good as the first Tetsuo's, but it's still more interesting than some of the reviews have suggested. That's the leave before the spoilers thing. They're both worth it, but Vital is wonderful. Vital is a big grief, but it's a very body conscious film. That's the best you can go in knowing about it. That's all I knew about it. I just watched Eric, the Asian movie enthusiast, review of it. That's all I knew about it, and I try to avoid knowing anything else. And it's the best way to go into it, to not know that much, so you can just experience it, because it is a very experiential film. If you're staying, okay, I'll go into more details. Basically, what happens is this guy and his girlfriend get in a crash, and she dies eventually. She dies like she lives on for a little bit, then she dies of injuries. He survives, but he has a head injury, which means he can't remember much about his life. So he has to go back and relearn everything. Now he knows that he wanted to be a doctor, but his passion for that was lost. At a certain point, he was about to give it up when the crash happened. But he decides to go back to it and start relearning again. And he's trying to work out who he was, what he was. But he's very distant from everybody. Everyone thinks he's a bit odd because he just is. He's no memory. So basically means without a memory, he's not even quite sure his personality. He doesn't quite sure his interaction with people. He's just a blank. And he has to live with that. He's a blank, essentially. He can get told things about who he was, but he can't feel it, because it's something he's been told, but he's not really what he is anymore. But he finds medical books we used to have, and he finds interest in the body. So he obviously rediscovers what he actually had of interest, which was talking about the body and talking about sorry, I'm just moving this, make it a bit further up. Talking about what he was, who he was through that. That's a way to express his life, his being. So that's what he does. But he's still struggling. So when he's gone through the courses and he's doing well. There's one girl who's doing better than him, but he's top of the class basically. He's the top guy. One of the top guys. He's obviously talented, obviously got a real knack for this. He understands the body and understands how to help people as a doctor. But he's still distant. He's not interacting with anybody. He goes back to his old apartment, which is a total crap hole. He's trying to work out who he was and try to gain his memories back, but he can't really do that until they go to the dissection room where they have to go to find his body. They have to do dissection on a body to work out what the muscles are and work out why they died, but also take apart the body and see where the muscles go and see where the lungs, the heart and everything else, how everything functions within a body that creates a person. So that's his way into the body again. And of course, in a very unrealistic element, but it's very vital to the story, is the fact that the body he and his small team has is the body of the girl who was his girlfriend who died. Something that in real life that wouldn't happen. Obviously, it would traumatize someone, it would be horrible, they wouldn't do that. But within a story, it can happen. And it works really well because it's him rediscovering and getting some memories back just by seeing a tattoo, which he remembers it's her tattoo. And then slowly, from taking the body apart, he's starting to remember things. And the girl who becomes his lover in the class, who's the top student, she has a different reaction to the body, which is she's sick a lot and she takes a long time for her to actually come to terms with the human body and what it actually is. Well, he doesn't have a problem with it, but he's using the body to remember her. He's also going back to the family of her who blame him for the accident. But as time passes, because the mother of the dead woman is dying, and when she dies, he's the only person that the actual father of the girl actually has left to remember the girl and his wife. So it's a slow process of blame, then understanding that it's slightly more complicated. And it's all about that, the complications of life, and he starts to remember her, the woman, but he also starts to fantasize about her. So is it a spirit, or is it his memory, or is he remembering something that happened in the past, or is he just daydreaming it, or is it his way of processing grief? they keep everything ambiguous, but it's always tied to emotion of who he is and what he's doing and what he's about and all of this. It's all about the tension of life as you try to come to terms with a horrible trauma. That's what Vital was about. Again, it's how to become vital to yourself, not to other people. It doesn't matter, because this guy's he's very important to a lot of people, but he can't communicate with them. He does not have the tools. It's just, I think the idea is he was always kind of quiet anyway, but he was getting self-destructive, and so and his girlfriend was self-destructive too. Like, they were both like nice kids who grew up and saw their life was more difficult than they imagined and more corrupt, and they were reacting badly to that. They were into kind of kinkier sex, and they were into trying things to try and make themselves feel again. So it was almost like they were asking for what happened to them. They were pushing, and she got unlucky and he got lucky. And it slowly starts to come back from the void of what he's become after the accident. And it's a bit of complicated realities of grief, how you use grief to be insular, how you use grief to push people away from you don't want to talk to. You can blame people for other things that probably wasn't their fault. How you can keep people at arm's distance as you try and process things, and how you slowly, how it's a slow process. It's not something that's very simple. It's not, because you have a complicated relationship with anybody you have in your life, and it takes time once they die to actually process it. It really does, and this is what it's that about. But it has a very body conscious feel to it, because he's literally tearing apart her body and seeing it with unsentimentality of what the functions are, and try to work out the difference between the body and the soul, or what we imagine the soul to be, which could just be a process of the body. And what's a body, what's a soul, what's a body to your personality, what you feel your personality is. Do you become a blank again once you've lost that, or can you process something new from that, from the physicality? So it's a very complicated film. The way Tsukamoto got really complicated as he got older, and how he moved on from the pure physical excesses of Tetsuo films, which was a pure expression of the body horror type of thing, to just something more complicated and more nuanced. This is a wonderful film. I'm probably not even doing it justice, but it is just stunning. I have it in tartan DVD. It deserves a Blu-ray or 4K, whatever, because it was beautiful. It's a wonderful film, and it's definitely worth seeing. Next is Tetsuo The Bullet Man. This is the third Tetsuo film made like 20 years after the first two. So it's a director going back to the well of what he once did, and doing it slightly differently. Because in the first two Tetsuo films, it was much more like an expression of rage against the world, and it was nihilistic in a way that a young person would be nihilistic. They're wonderful films, but they're not in any way my favourite Tsukamoto films. I think they're great expressions of youthful rage, but I like the more mature Tsukamoto who can have the rage but also have understanding of people's flaws. And this is made within, this is almost like him taking the aesthetic of his old rage into his new maturity, and it doesn't quite jive, honestly. It's like taking a look at rage through the view of someone who has gotten beyond it slightly and is actually investigating what anger does to somebody. So the Bullet Man thing is, the idea is he's a man who has become a weapon. He's been weaponized. His physicality's become weaponized through the sins of his parents and all the rest of it. It's very much Ang Lee's Hulk, which is another film that a lot of people really hate, because it is like a look at rage in a kind of very stylized way that distances you from it in a weird way. So it is probably the most emotionally distanced Tsukamoto film. Like, you're not really with the hero as much as you normally are. Like, the lead actor's not great. He's just not great. It's like, it's the problem. You don't feel that much sympathy for him. I mean, you didn't really feel that much sympathy for the first two Tetsuo protagonists either. But they were almost ciphers for you to experience things through. This one, he's meant to be a bit more of a character made from an older director, but he doesn't have an actor to really pull it off, and that's a slight problem. And also, it doesn't really build to anything. It builds and builds and builds into the expression of body horror. But as I said earlier, Tsukamoto had moved on and done more nuanced stuff, and now him doing this again feels more like taking old ticks, and it's not quite him anymore. It is him, but it's, he never quite found a metaphor for taking this idea about rage and societal rage and existential rage and putting it to good use within a film that he'd make now. Because he made this before he made Kokoto, which is Up Fires in the Plane, and they were both amazing films. And this one just feels like an immature film made by a mature man, and it's got that weird vibe to it. But it is interesting, because Tsukamoto can't make an utterly useless film. He's still going to do interesting stuff. It's just that this thing is not quite what his other later films are. You know, it's not quite experimental, it's not quite emotional. It just feels like it's a thing that's been made, but he's moved on from it, and it doesn't quite come together the way you wish it would. And it's hard to talk about because there's not much there that I never really talked about already in another video about other films. It's like everything's already there, and it's maybe a look at rage, how it dominates you, and how you can get over it. But getting over it only takes about 10 minutes at the end, or maybe even 5, and it's not really explored in the depth of what it should have been if that was the point of the film. Like, not for me anyway. It just doesn't feel like everything was integrated right. It was just feels like you had one expression going one way, one going the other way, and they were meant to kind of come together and start to mingle a little bit and create something complicated and emotional, and they never did. It's kind of like what Cronenberg did with M. Butterfly, where you had lots of stuff going on, a lot of interesting stuff, but never quite got together and bonded right. So, I mean, every director misses some point, and this is one of his misses, but it's still a very interesting miss. So, I still recommend going to see it. It's 70 minutes long, so you're not going to be in for much of a slog. It's still enjoyable, it's still a really good director taking a look at his earlier period of filmmaking. It's just not as good as the other period because he's moved on. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy this format. You can see me better now with this new webcam, so hopefully that'll help. Because the last few were a bit blurry because the webcam wasn't as good. So I'll be back soon for another video. Alright, bye for now.